You don't need to tell everyone your next move. You don't need to explain your goals, your plans, your dreams. You need to build quietly, relentlessly, with discipline, because here's the truth. Most people are more in love with talking about change than actually doing it. But not you. You're different. You're here to build something real, and that starts with silence. The first way to build yourself quietly is simple. Own your mornings. Wake up with purpose, not a phone in your hand. The morning is your time. It's the foundation of everything else. When you start your day by investing in yourself, whether it's a workout, journaling, or focused learning, you're sending a message to your brain, I matter. My future matters. Stop giving your mornings to distractions. Take them back. That's where your momentum begins. Second, set boundaries like your life depends on it, because it does. Quiet building means protecting your energy. Not everyone deserves access to you. Not every invite deserves a yes. If it doesn't align with your goals, it's a distraction. You don't need to defend your silence. You don't need to justify your discipline. Say no, unapologetically. You're not rude, you're focused, you're not distant, you're becoming. Let your boundaries reflect your vision. Third, stop announcing your plans. You don't owe the world a roadmap. Every time you talk about what you're going to do, your brain gets a little hit of dopamine just from saying it. That's dangerous, because it tricks you into thinking you're making progress when you're not. Talk less. Do more. Let them wonder what you're up to. Let your results speak so loudly they don't even remember you were quiet. Fourth, become obsessed with learning. Not scrolling, not gossip. Learning, read, watch, study, then apply it. The people who build quietly are students of the game. They don't wait to be told what to do. They go find the knowledge and they use it. Make learning part of your identity. You don't need a certificate to grow. You need hunger. You need discipline. You need execution. Fifth, be consistent when it's boring, because that's the difference maker. Anybody can show up when they're motivated. Anyone can start. But the ones who finish, the ones who transform, they show up when it's hard, when it's repetitive, when no one's clapping. Quiet growth is built on those days when you don't want to do it, but you do it anyway. That's how you separate yourself. And sixth, protect your mindset, because your mind is where everything starts. You can't build anything great with a toxic inner voice. You have to rewire it. Replace doubt with discipline. Replace fear with action. Replace comparison with focus. Stop giving your power away to people who don't understand your journey. You're not here to impress them. You're here to evolve. So yeah, maybe you're not making noise right now. Maybe you're not being noticed. But don't mistake quiet for weakness. Quiet is where real growth happens. Quiet is where the mindset shifts. Quiet is where the habits are built, where the confidence is earned, where the real work begins. And when that moment comes, when the world finally sees what you've become, they won't remember your silence. They'll remember your transformation. Not because you talked about it, but because you became it. Let me tell you something powerful. The world doesn't need to know what you're building. You don't need to post about your every move, share your dreams with everyone, or explain your progress to people who wouldn't even understand it. In fact, the most successful, confident, and resilient people, they build quietly. They build when nobody's watching, when nobody's clapping, when no one is validating them. Because they know the truth. Your growth is your responsibility, and it doesn't need an audience. The first way to start building yourself quietly is by mastering your mornings. That means waking up with intention, not scrolling. You get up and you claim those early hours. You create a routine that puts your mind in motion before the world can interrupt. You move your body. You journal. You work on your goals, not because someone told you to, not for content, but because it sets the tone for the day. Quiet growth begins with ownership, and it starts the moment your feet hit the ground. You don't need a gym selfie. You don't need to check in online. You just need to show up. First, second, you set boundaries like your life depends on it, because it does. You don't owe your time, energy, or explanations to everyone. You're not here to be liked by everyone. You're here to build something real, and that requires focus, silence, space. When you're constantly reacting to drama, distractions, or people's opinions, you're leaking your power. Building yourself quietly means saying no more often, even if it disappoints people. Protect your peace, guard your goals, and understand that every time you say no to the unnecessary, you're saying yes to your growth. Third, you stop announcing your every move. This one's huge. You don't have to share your plans with anyone until they're done. Why? Because talking gives you a false sense of accomplishment. It tricks your brain into thinking you're progressing when all you've done is speak. The people who talk the most usually do the least. So flip the script. Let them think you're doing nothing. Let them underestimate you. That's your power. Let your results speak so loud that you don't have to. That quiet work behind closed doors, it's creating something they won't see coming. Fourth, you learn daily. Quiet builders are relentless learners. They don't waste hours scrolling or gossiping. They read, they study, they watch, they observe, and more importantly, they apply. You want to change your life? Then feed your mind like your future depends on it. Because it does. It doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be a diploma or a degree. It can be 15 minutes of reading, a podcast while you drive, a course after work. You don't need a stage or a spotlight to be a student of life. You just need hunger and discipline. Fifth, you stay consistent even when no one notices. This is where most people fall off. When the results are slow, when the progress is invisible, when it feels like nothing's working. But the quiet builder, they keep going because they know the compounding effect of small, consistent effort is unstoppable. They don't rely on motivation. They rely on systems, habits, and grit. You do the work even when it's boring. You show up when it's inconvenient. You keep your promises to yourself even when no one is holding you accountable. That's how real change happens, not in one big moment, but in 1,000 small ones stacked in silence. And finally, you protect your mindset like a fortress. The loud world will try to shake your confidence. People will question you, doubt you, ignore you. But you don't need their validation. You need your own belief. You wake up and remind yourself, I'm building something, I'm evolving. I'm not the same person I was last year, last month, or even yesterday. And that change, that growth, it's not for everyone to understand. It's for you to embody, quietly, powerfully, relentlessly, because the best version of you isn't loud, it's focused. And when you build yourself quietly, you become unstoppable. You don't need permission to change your life. You don't need a massive audience, the perfect timing, or the loud approval of others. What you need is a decision to build yourself, not for the applause, but for the person you're becoming. When you stop trying to impress people and start trying to improve yourself, everything changes. Quiet growth is the most dangerous kind of growth because it's rooted in intention, not attention. One of the most powerful ways to build yourself quietly is to develop a personal code, a set of non-negotiables that define how you live. These aren't rules for the world to see. These are promises to yourself. Maybe it's waking up before 6 a.m. Maybe it's no social media until after you've worked on your goals. Maybe it's reading 10 pages every day, meditating, working out, or drinking more water. It doesn't matter what the code is. It matters that you stick to it. Not because someone's watching, not because you'll get rewarded, but because it's who you are becoming. Quiet builders live by a code that reinforces their identity, day after day. Another way to build yourself silently is by embracing solitude. Not loneliness, solitude. There's a difference. Solitude is chosen. It's a state where you disconnect from the noise so you can hear your own thoughts. When you spend time alone with yourself, without distractions, you start to reconnect with what matters. You start to realize what you value, what you believe, and what direction you actually want to go in. This clarity is everything. When you're constantly surrounded by people, opinions, and comparison, you lose sight of your path. Solitude brings it back. It sharpens your focus, and it makes you realize you're not here to follow the crowd. You're here to lead yourself. Building quietly also means you stop chasing motivation and start building systems. Motivation is like a sugar rush. It spikes, then it crashes. Systems, they keep you grounded. They give you structure. You don't have to feel like doing the work. You just do it because it's part of your system. Quiet growth thrives on repeatable actions. And here's the truth. When you stop relying on how you feel and start leaning on discipline, you become unstoppable. You set your goals, reverse engineer them into daily actions, and you execute every single day. Whether you feel like it or not, that's how champions are made. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows, in the structure, in the silence. Another essential step is learning how to delay gratification. In a world addicted to instant results, quiet builders are playing the long game. They understand that success isn't supposed to be fast. It's supposed to be earned. You don't build confidence through shortcuts. You build it through sacrifice. You put your head down, you say no to temporary pleasures, and you work. While others are binge-watching shows, partying every weekend, or constantly seeking distractions, you're building. Not because it's glamorous, but because it's necessary. And guess what? In a few months or a year, the people who questioned your silence will be asking how you did it. You also have to detach from the need to prove anything to anyone. When you're truly building yourself, your only competition is the person you were yesterday. The moment you stop measuring your progress against someone else's timeline is the moment you take back your power. Comparison is a trap. It makes you perform instead of transform. Quiet builders don't perform. They evolve, and they evolve on their own terms, at their own pace. They celebrate small wins. They track their own growth. They don't care who's watching because they're too busy becoming. Finally, building yourself quietly means healing. You confront your past, your patterns, and your pain, not to dwell on them, but to rise above them. This work is deep, personal, and often invisible to the outside world, but it's what changes everything. You forgive, you let go, you unlearn the beliefs that once held you back, and in doing so, you become lighter, stronger, more grounded. This internal work may never be posted online. No one may ever clap for it, but it's the foundation of the person you're becoming. So if you're out there working on yourself, silently grinding, quietly growing, keep going. You don't need to be seen. You don't need to be loud. You just need to be committed. Because one day, the results will show. And when they do, the world won't be asking what you said. They'll be asking how you did it. And your answer will be simple: I built myself. Quietly, relentlessly, completely. Every time you choose to stay quiet and focused instead of seeking validation, you're strengthening a muscle most people never develop: self-trust. Building yourself quietly isn't just about avoiding attention. It's about creating a version of you that is so strong, so grounded, that you no longer depend on approval, praise, or recognition to move forward. You no longer need someone else to say you're doing great because you know it deep in your bones. That kind of power? It's rare, and it's earned, not given. There's something deeply powerful about working in silence. You're not distracted by judgment. You're not swayed by compliments or criticism. You're not constantly adjusting your goals based on who's watching. You become laser focused. You stop looking sideways and start looking inward. And when you do that, something shifts. You stop trying to be impressive and start becoming impactful. You start chasing depth instead of attention. Most people live on the surface: what looks good, what sounds good, what's trending. But when you build yourself quietly, you go deeper. You're not trying to look successful. You're actually becoming successful. And that difference, that's everything. Another major benefit of building quietly is the ability to make mistakes without the world watching. Let's be real. Growth is messy. You will fail. You will fall. You will try things that don't work. But when you're not broadcasting every move, you have the freedom to experiment, to pivot, to grow behind the scenes. You don't have to explain every setback. You don't need to justify your pace. You simply learn, adjust, and keep moving forward. Quiet builders give themselves the space to fail privately so they can succeed publicly. That's how true mastery is born, not in front of a crowd, but in solitude, in struggle, in silence. You also become more resilient. When you're not relying on external feedback to feel worthy, you become immune to the noise. People will doubt you. People will question why you're so quiet, why you're not showing off, why you're not making announcements. Let them wonder. Because while they're busy talking, you're busy building. And the more you build, the stronger your foundation becomes. That resilience doesn't come from hype. It comes from discipline. It comes from knowing that your habits are aligned with your vision, even if no one else sees the bigger picture yet. Let's talk about patience, because quiet growth demands it. The world teaches you to want everything now: fast results, quick wins, instant success. But when you build yourself quietly, you understand that true transformation takes time. You're not rushing. You're not trying to microwave your dreams. You're planting seeds, nurturing them daily, and trusting the process. That kind of patience gives you an edge. It makes you dangerous in the best way. Because while others burn out chasing shortcuts, you're still standing, still rising, still going. Building yourself quietly also gives you clarity. When you remove the noise, the opinions, the expectations, the constant need to perform, you finally start to hear your own voice. You get honest about what you want. You reconnect with your purpose, and that clarity helps you make better decisions. You're no longer reacting to pressure. You're choosing with intention. You stop trying to fit into boxes that were never meant for you. You start designing a life that's aligned with your values, your truth, your power. And here's the part most people miss. Quiet doesn't mean weak. It doesn't mean small. It doesn't mean hiding. Quiet means intentional or strategic, powerful. You're not shrinking. You're sharpening. You're not retreating. You're rebuilding. And when the time comes, when you're ready to step into the light, it won't be with noise. It will be with impact. People won't remember what you said. They'll remember what you did. The transformation, the glow up, the energy. And that energy, it's forged in silence. So keep going, keep building, keep rising in the dark. Don't worry if no one claps right now. Don't stop just because no one notices. Your progress is still progress. Your growth is still real. And one day, you'll look back and realize the silence was your strength. The discipline, the solitude, the commitment to yourself, that was the work. That was the preparation. That was the version of you that changed everything. You didn't need an audience, you just needed belief, quiet, unshakable belief. And that right there is what makes you unstoppable. There's a certain freedom that comes when you stop needing people to see what you're doing and start trusting the process you're living. When you decide to build yourself quietly, you take the pressure off performance and place the focus on progress. This is where real transformation begins. Not in showing people your journey, but in living it fully, day by day, without needing recognition for it. Because the truth is, the most powerful changes are the ones no one sees coming. And that kind of change, it's built in private, not on display. One of the most underrated advantages of building quietly is emotional control. When you're not constantly broadcasting your life, you're less reactive to the world around you. You're not consumed by how your progress compares to someone else's. You're not distracted by opinions, criticism, or even praise. You begin to lead from within instead of chasing what's out there. This inner stability, this emotional mastery, is one of the most important foundations for any meaningful success. Because let's face it, life is unpredictable. But when you build quietly, you learn to respond instead of react. You become calm in chaos, focused amid noise, and that clarity gives you the edge. Quiet growth also builds integrity. When you do the right things even when no one's watching, you build self-respect. And self-respect is the foundation of confidence. You know who you are. You know what you've been through. You know what you've sacrificed. You've shown up when it was hard. You've kept going when no one said thank you. That quiet consistency is what shapes your character. And while the world chases approval, you're becoming someone you can rely on. That's a rare kind of strength, not loud, but deeply rooted. You become your own source of pride. You look in the mirror and feel proud, not because someone clapped for you, but because you know the truth of what you've done. Building in silence also strengthens your intuition. When you remove the need to be constantly validated, you start listening to your gut. You stop second-guessing yourself. You stop overthinking every decision. Because now, you're not trying to meet expectations, you're trying to meet your potential. That internal compass gets sharper with every quiet choice you make. You begin to trust your own judgment. You stop outsourcing your self-worth. And suddenly, the noise of the world fades, and you realize you always knew the way. You just had to get quiet enough to hear it. Another powerful benefit? Momentum. Quiet builders understand that motion creates momentum. The first few steps might feel invisible. You might feel like nothing's changing. But the moment you string those small wins together, when you stay consistent through the silence, you start building unstoppable momentum. No one sees the early grind. They don't see the late nights, the early mornings, the skipped parties, or the countless times you kept going when it would have been easier to quit. But that's what creates momentum. That's what sets you apart. While others wait for the perfect time or the right mood, you're building quietly, steadily, relentlessly. And let's talk about humility, because quiet growth humbles you in the best way. You stop needing to prove you're better than anyone. You stop needing to be seen as impressive. You stop trying to outshine people. Why? Because you're too focused on becoming the best version of you. When you build in silence, you realize that the real competition was never external. It was always internal. You're not trying to win the race against others. You're just trying to run faster than the version of you who kept making excuses. And that shift in mindset, that's everything. Quiet growth also teaches you gratitude. You start appreciating the little things, the small wins, the daily discipline, the incremental changes. You stop rushing for the end goal and start falling in love with the process. That patience, that appreciation for the journey becomes your fuel. You realize that success isn't a single destination. It's the daily decision to show up, to try, to believe, and you don't need to shout about it because the journey itself is enough. So if you're building yourself in silence, know this: you are doing something powerful. You are breaking away from the noise, stepping into purpose, and aligning with something deeper than attention. You are creating a version of yourself that doesn't crumble under pressure or seek validation to keep going. And when the results finally show, and they will, it won't be luck. It won't be hype. It'll be the quiet power of consistency, of discipline, of belief. You're not waiting to be noticed. You're preparing to be undeniable. And that preparation, that quiet, steady grind, it will change everything. There will come a moment in your life when you realize that noise doesn't build anything. Discipline does. And in that moment, you'll choose silence. You'll choose focus. You'll choose to build something meaningful, not for applause, not for likes, not for someone else's opinion, but for yourself. And that's the moment everything changes. Because once you stop living for the world's attention, you start living with real intention. And that intention, that's what builds you into someone powerful. When you decide to build yourself quietly, one of the first things you give up is the need to be understood. Not everyone will get your journey. Not everyone will understand why you suddenly disappeared from the scene, why you're not sharing every detail, why you're no longer interested in superficial validation. And that's okay. You don't need their permission to grow. You don't need to explain your silence. Let them talk. Let them assume. Your only responsibility is to keep showing up for yourself every single day. The people who are meant to stay will support you, even in your silence. The rest, let them go. You also learn to fall in love with the grind, the unglamorous, repetitive, thankless grind, the early mornings where you drag yourself out of bed, the nights when you want to quit but don't, the uncomfortable choices you make over and over again, even when no one is watching. That is the foundation of your success. You don't need to go viral to become valuable. You don't need a platform to create purpose. You just need a mission, a plan, and the discipline to follow through. That quiet, consistent effort is what separates those who dream from those who do. And while you're building, something else happens. Your relationship with failure changes. When you're no longer performing for the world, failure stops being a public shame and starts becoming a private lesson. You fail forward. You fall, but no one sees it, only you. And that's a gift. Because without the pressure of judgment, you can experiment. You can grow. You can course correct. Every mistake becomes a stepping stone. Every setback becomes a setup. And you keep going. Not because you have something to prove, but because you have something to become. You also start to develop this deep inner peace, a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you're doing the work. It's not loud. It doesn't need to be. But it's real. You're not faking it. You're not pretending to be something you're not. You're becoming someone new, step by step, choice by choice. And when you look back 6 months, a year, even 5 years from now, you'll be shocked at how far you've come. Not because you shouted it from the rooftops, but because you did the work when no one else saw. Quiet growth also forces you to prioritize. When you're not building for the spotlight, you stop wasting energy on distractions. You start asking yourself better questions. Does this align with my goals? Is this helping me grow? Is this worth my time? And when you start living from that place, when every choice becomes intentional, you start building momentum in ways that last. You're not just getting better at what you do, you're becoming wiser about how you do it. That level of clarity and focus is rare and it's powerful. And let's not forget the most important thing. Your future self is watching. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, Every time you show up without recognition, every time you push through when no one's clapping, you're building someone who can handle success when it finally arrives. Because let me be clear, success without preparation becomes stress. But success built in silence, that's stability, that's power, that's legacy. So keep going, keep grinding, keep showing up in silence. Let them doubt you. Let them think you're done. Let them wonder what happened. You don't owe them updates. You don't owe them explanations. Your results will be the proof. Your transformation will be the answer. And when the world finally sees what you've become, it won't be because you told them. It'll be because you showed them, quietly, consistently, relentlessly. And that kind of success, that's the kind that lasts.